Welcome to another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and joining me in just a moment will be my co-host, Chad Ronnebaum. And we don't seem to be hearing anything from Keith Beebe today, so for now, it's going to be me and Chad running the show this evening. So if you guys want to give us your thoughts, you can always call in at 1-954-376-5704. It's just me and Chad tonight for now, so if you want to call in, make sure you give us your thoughts, and we'll talk about whatever you have to talk about. Chad, nice to have you with us. You just joined us. And we appear to be having some technical difficulties with Chad. So while we get him on the horn, let me just discuss this real quick. Dolphins have a lot of stuff going on, ladies and gentlemen. We got some free agency stuff happening. We got some trades going on. And depending on your view of it, depending on whether you think there's actually a plan going here or not, or whether you just think that Mike Tannenbaum is just throwing pieces around just for the sake of doing it, and I don't know, maybe he's trying to save his job because this may be his last stop in football if he doesn't get it right, but I digress. The Miami Dolphins have a lot of stuff going on right now. First of all, the biggest thing right now, and everybody's still freaking out about this, is the big-time blockbuster trade. Maybe blockbuster, we don't know yet until we find out what we gave up. But the Miami Dolphins essentially traded for the Philadelphia Eagles cornerback Byron Maxwell and linebacker Kiko Alonso. And there's a lot of stuff going on with that. Kiko Alonso is a very talented young linebacker who has torn his ACL twice, so that may be why they're willing to let him go so easily. And, of course, Byron Maxwell is a big-time cornerback who didn't come up so big-time in Philly. He was doing really well in Seattle, and now Miami Dolphins are apparently hoping that he will be able to re-jump his career, and he'll be able to get back into being a really good cornerback. And all of this is naturally because the Miami Dolphins are apparently looking to move on from Brent Grimes and consequently Miko Grimes. They're looking to trade him from what I'm able to hear, and it doesn't look like it's going so well because nobody wants to take on the baggage that is Miko Grimes. And there's also some more news. The Miami Dolphins signed Mario Williams to a 2-year deal that will give him about 8 years, and averaging 8 years per year. $8 million per year. And then there's Cameron Wake. Apparently, he's going to be staying with the Miami Dolphins. So that makes a very formidable defensive line of Cameron Wake and Ndamukong Suh, Earl Mitchell or Jordan Phillips, and Mario Williams. So there's a lot of stuff to be happy about. There's a lot of stuff to be worried about. We still don't know what the trade compensation is for the Philadelphia Eagles trade. We will likely find that out tomorrow when free agency officially begins on Wednesday. I don't know when it was that it actually starts. Chad, do you know what time officially free agency actually starts?
I don't know. I basically just consider that it has started, but
yeah, this is true.
I don't know the actual time, like the official time, no.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening here. I mean, let's Chad, what do you want to talk about first? I mean, let's just go ahead because really we can start anywhere. We're going to be talking all night anyway.
Well, I think we, touch base on an update. If anybody's listening to get an update of what's going on, I mean, you touched on that. Pending a physical, I don't know. I haven't read yet that the physicals have been completed, but Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso are going to be on the teams, assuming they pass their physical. The compensation has definitely not been officially reported, and nor are we in a position to say what it is. What's going through from what we're hearing is that it was originally reported that Miami was swapping their number one pick with the Eagles, which would be, I believe the Eagles are 13th. Is that right, Louis, overall? And we're 8th. So we basically moved back 5 positions in the first round. And then there has been a report that we were also getting the Eagles' 4th round pick as well, which if that's true would be an unbelievably skewed trade to the Dolphins. But I've also more recently heard reports that's not true, and so it's being rumored that it's just the swap of the first round pick. So that's what we know. Like I said, we have no credible, or we are not getting any official reports that what the trade is, but that's what we know. Both of them are younger football players that have had some issues, so it's not like we're getting elite players with them. We know are blue chippers. Kiko Alonso was a Rookie of the Year. If he's healthy, is a very good linebacker, desperate need for the team. Byron Maxwell is a big corner, something the team has needed. And if he has his combine capability, he was a 4-4 corner that, he's tall and big. And I've been seeing reported that he's a press corner, but or a zone corner, but I think he is more of a press corner, to be honest, in terms of what his physical stature is. So that's the details of the trade. And then the other update, is we have officially signed Mario Williams to play defensive end to this team. Otherwise, we have no idea what's going on with Olivier Vernon. We know they tagged him to the transition tag, which means as of right now, Miami can still match any offer made to Olivier Vernon. And that will be one where you won't see anybody making offers to him until the actual deadline. So tomorrow, basically, at whatever time that starts, Olivier Vernon will start talking to teams. Whether or not the Dolphins are going to untag him remains up in the air. The update on why the Dolphins would untag him would be obviously one, in part, that they've signed Mario Williams. Two, it is being reported that it looks like they don't intend to cut Cameron Wake. And if that's true, it would seem highly unlikely they're going to be able to pay a bunch of money to Olivier Vernon. So if the Dolphins pull the transition tag, how that works for people listening out there is they have given, right now, Olivier Vernon could walk in the Dolphins headquarters, sign his contract, get $12 million for this season, and they could not pull that tag, which Olivier Vernon would obviously be crazy to do because he's going to get a massive, probably 4 or 5 year deal for much, much more than that. So he won't do that. But if he doesn't sign it, then Miami can just say, okay, we're just going to rescind it, pull it back, or untag him, however you want to phrase it. If that happens, then Olivier Vernon will just become a free agent, and the benefit to the Dolphins is they will get a compensation pick. Just like they will for Lamar Miller as well. That's usually a lower round pick, like maybe a 6th or 7th round. So that appears what's going to be happening with those guys. Lewis mentioned Brent Grimes. Several reports were that he had been cut. The truth is, right now, there has been no official report that he has been cut. And I think, Lewis, I think you're pretty accurate. I think Grimes was thinking that I'm just going to immediately jump to another team, and I don't think they're getting the interest that maybe he would think they're going to get. So as of right now, Brent Grimes is probably in a scenario where the Dolphins have told him, your two choices are you're going to take a pay cut or we're going to let you go. And he's probably evaluating which direction he wants to go with Brent Grimes. So I think that if I'm missing anything, let me know. But I think that brings everybody up to speed with what we know and what has happened. And so I guess maybe take it in chronological order, Lewis. So maybe touch on the trade first, player by player. What are your thoughts on Byron Maxwell?
I think that Byron Maxwell could be a very good addition to the Miami Dolphins. I'm actually working on a piece that would explain why that I think Maxwell would be one of the better moves that we could make for the Miami Dolphins. Now, obviously, his contract needs to be redone. He's going to make I don't know. He would count for just about the same amount of money that Brent Grimes would make, and we keep having we have a caller that keeps coming in and out, and I don't know what's going on with that. So caller, if you could keep trying, man. I think I know who it is. I think it's Keith. Let me just try. Hang on, here he comes again. Keith, is this you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hello. What's the matter? Why you keep calling in and out?
I don't know. I've been trying to get through, and this is my first successful attempt.
I answered the 3 times. Well, whatever. Okay, so anyway, we're discussing what else, free agency, and I was just asked about what I'm thinking of Byron Maxwell, and I'm actually going to pass the buck to you since you're here. What's your thoughts on the whole Byron Maxwell thing? Just him as a player, and what do you think he'll be able to do?
I mean, if you take out him being asked to play in a man coverage team in Philadelphia last season, and you look at what he was able to do in that cover 3 and cover 4 in Seattle, there's a lot to like about him. I mean, he's a bigger corner. He's a longer guy. He's a big hitter. He's a little bit grabby, which I think something that really worked against him in that coverage. But if you can get past the whole stint that he had in Philadelphia, there's something to like there. So I mean, it's going to depend on the compensation, obviously, in terms of how well received this move will be by Dolphins fans. But I think, I mean, if you have to assume that Vance Joseph's in there, and they're asking him, which players do you want? Who are the guys you want in this 4-3 under scheme that you're going to run in Miami? And Byron Maxwell is one of those guys. So, and I mean, Kiko Alonso, you're getting dirt cheap too. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to him in a second, but I mean, I like it, and I don't have a problem with it. I mean, we'll know more about it when those terms finally come out sometime tomorrow.
Just to touch on that, Keith, for people listening, honestly, I think it's being misreported right now in the media a little bit that they're taking on a massive contract. Byron Maxwell does have a big contract, but what Miami is basically getting is to be on the hook for, I should say, as of right now, is 13 million, about 8 of which 8.5, I want to say, is what are due this year. So essentially, you're getting, I don't know where Byron Maxwell would fall in the free agent market, but I think he'd probably be one of the top 3 or 4 corners, even though he didn't have a great year in Philly. If you're comparing him against to what is actually available in the market for corners that are free agents, he would probably be in the top 3 or 4, and he's going to get paid that money. Being my point, that $8.5 million is not that much money to pay for a season for a corner, and then next year they would be on the hook for approximately half of that. The benefit to the Dolphins is they didn't have to pay him out a big signing bonus up front, was what the Eagles paid him. And so you're essentially getting potentially a high caliber cornerback, and you're just paying him in the market. But basically, going into next year, Miami can just cut Byron Maxwell without a major cap hit. And that's what it's really all about. And so Byron Maxwell, even if they didn't renegotiate him, if he doesn't play up to par where they're expecting him for this season, this isn't a huge money pit for the Dolphins or anything like that. So I think from the contractual standpoint, I think a lot of people are thinking, oh my God, they're taking on a $63 million contract because that's what he signed with the Eagles. But the reality is there's a very small percentage of that they're actually going to be on the hook for after this year. So to me, when we were talking about their needs, I thought they had to get another veteran corner in here because there's a really good chance they're going to draft cornerback help. But other than Brett Grimes, they just don't have any experienced cornerbacks. And so I thought it was important they get one. Obviously I was thinking they'd go out to free agency and try to get their hands on one of the corners, but this works just as well, assuming they're not giving up a bunch in compensation in the trade, which I don't think is the case. I like the trade too. I know he didn't do well in Philadelphia, but he has the physical stature to be a press corner. I mean, he's a big guy. And what this more than anything signals is a change in the defensive philosophy, that's coming to Miami. And in my opinion, I like Brett Grimes. I like how he played. But I always was a little bit concerned that, with the old coaching regime here, they always took small corners. And I know they played a lot of zone with them, but, Miami suffered for it in several games. We've got to cover Rob Gronkowski twice a game, and it's so difficult to match him up on small corners because even if you run the routes right, he's just so much bigger. It's just so hard one-on-one to handle him. And even in the NFL, it just seems every team anymore has their alpha receiver who's like a 6'3" guy, 6'4", that they send vertical, and you need a guy that you can match up with those guys down the field. So I thought it was an important move for the Dolphins to get him in here, and he doesn't have any serious injury concerns from the last year or two. So the hope is that Philadelphia was kind of a train wreck last year anyway. So the hope is that he can get back and be a really solid corner for the team. And if that's the case, I don't think his contract's astronomically crazy for that kind of corner.
I would like to
I
point
totally
out.
agree.
Hang on. Sorry, Keith. I would like to point out though that again, I disagree with you, Chad, about the whole idea of a defensive philosophy change. Vance Joseph said that he wants to keep playing zone coverage, and for this, again, this is why I bring it up. What Byron Maxwell excelled in Seattle was that zone coverage scheme. So putting him back in a zone coverage scheme, I understand the size aspect, but not just because you're big doesn't mean you're press. So for him to be able to play zone again, I think that's the biggest the biggest key here in the potential of Byron Maxwell actually being a good cornerback for the Miami Dolphins. It's more about the fit than it is about Maxwell himself. Yeah, he's big. Yeah, he's fast. But that doesn't mean that you're necessarily a press corner. Brent Grimes could have been 5'10", and he could have sucked in zone and be press corner. Just as long as you are able to keep with your guy and make sure that you can stay with them, you can pretty much do anything. The skill sets are not necessarily predicated on size. Maxwell, I think if Maxwell excelled in zone coverage, then logic dictates that you would put him back in zone and he would start doing well again. And also the whole idea of a free agency, there's still the whole rumor about the Dolphins doing Pac-Man Jones, and I'm gonna hold my breath on that because the whole Vance Joseph thing and Pac-Man saying that he wants to go somewhere where he feels comfortable, and of course he was very comfortable with Vance Joseph. So I think I would not be surprised to see Pac-Man Jones coming soon. And this isn't like this is anything new that's being reported. This has been talked about several times over the past couple of weeks now, and I think it's gonna. And personally, this is just me saying, I don't have any sources or anything like that, but I do feel like it'll come to a head tomorrow because Pac-Man really seems to just basing it off of everything that's been said. I think Pac-Man does want to come to Miami, but. Keith, now back to Byron Maxwell just for a moment. What do you think about the whole zone versus man and the whole contract thing that Chad brought up?
Well, it's a buy low option, first of all, mainly because he mentioned that if it doesn't work this year, you can just cut him next year, and it's not a big deal. I mean, you're not on the hook for a ton of money here. So, and it's a guy who if you take out 2015, was a highly sought after free agent on the market, and Philadelphia no doubt overpaid for that guy. I mean, Chip Kelly, his free agent acquisitions were a complete dumpster fire. I think we'd all be in agreement there. But I mean, if you see what Byron Maxwell was able to do for Seattle to cover 3, sometimes to cover 4, he's just built. I mean, he's got good short area burst. He's really good with the play in front of him. He's a guy he can be a take on corner in terms of the run game. There's plenty of examples if you just go and watch even a short reel of his stuff. I mean, he looks comfortable taking on ball carriers. He even shows a great amount of physicality there. I think in a lot of ways, I can see Vance Joseph wanting a guy like Byron Maxwell because Byron Maxwell resembles Ray Kirkpatrick in several instances regarding skill set. I mean, both guys, longer corners, really good at taking on the run. Guys who are more comfortable in zone, though. And, I mean, I do think that Chad brought up a decent point that I don't believe that Byron Maxwell a terrible press man corner. He had some flashes where he can turn, he can locate the ball. He's definitely a punchy guy up the line of scrimmage. I mean, like if he's going to get that jam in, I think he looks like a strong guy who can get in there and really redirect guys at the line of scrimmage, which is something that you can also do as you're working through a receiver's stem. You can do that in zone. You're expected to funnel guys to redirect them. So I mean, he's got that ability. He's just a good defensive back. And I mean, people, if you just take out 2015, I mean, I'm not saying he's a shutdown guy. He's not. He's capable of being a really good number 2, like he was in Seattle. Because Richard Sherman was drawing those numbers. I mean, Richard Sherman was staying over there regardless, over on the left side of the defense. And Byron Maxwell, after Brandon Browner ran into a bunch of problems and wasn't the number 2 corner anymore, it was Byron Maxwell. And Byron Maxwell held up against Aaron Rodgers in that he was one guy who on Seattle's defense showed up early and often in that NFC Championship game. Not last season, but the season before. So he's a good player. I think the Kirkpatrick comparison is something that Vance Joseph saw and wanted to get in Miami because Chad mentioned that up until Byron Maxwell's addition, which isn't even official yet, but I mean, you've had smaller corners here. You've had your Jamar Taylors and your Brent Grimes, and even Will Davis wasn't. I mean, Will Davis had decent arm length, but a guy that wasn't overly physical, despite the fact that he was built like a physical corner. So I mean, now you're getting those guys out of there, and you're bringing in true zone guys. It's one thing to say we brought in all these zone corners. All you heard about Jamar Taylor coming out of Boise State was, well, he's a zone corner. You know, he's got that great short area burst. He's great at breaking on the ball. He keeps things in front of him. just a quick twitch guy, and some of that was true. But I mean, like he had some great glimpses, or I would say some great flashes with the Dolphins. But just as a whole, just not an ultra reliable guy. Not the number one guy that the Dolphins and their fans hoped that they had when they drafted him in 2013. And Grimes, with the fact that his play has fallen off, now you need to go ahead and you need to restock the coverage here. And I think the big problem everyone had yesterday was when the Maxwell news first came through, they thought, this is going to be our number one guy. This is crap. This guy sucked in Philadelphia last year. This guy is a Chip Kelly train wreck. And then people realized that, well, if you're not getting him, or if you're not giving up a lot for him, and now you have a guy who, I mean, if you're fortunate, becomes your number two corner, that's a great investment, especially the fact that you don't have to keep him around long term. You're not paying that full $50 million. You're not on the hook for that. So, I mean, it's just a great buy low scenario. And I mean, Mike Tannenbaum's easy to tear out. He's done a lot of stupid things as a football exec and a GM in this league, but I think that, I mean, as long as the compensation isn't over the top bad, I think this is a smart buy low option for the Dolphins.
Yeah, and that's why when I was referring to Keith as being misreported, because I think we obviously follow football intensely close and understand a lot more, but the average football fan, all they see is that Miami's taking on a $63 million contract, and they just think, oh my God, they're getting a guy who didn't play that well for $63 million. And that's why I try to point out, I'm like, you got to understand in free agency, the goal of your team's to get better, and you can only get better with what's available. And so if you look at the corners out there that they would have had to look at signing, this is a much safer deal, because even if you're not paying the corner, say $8.5 million this year, and you're going to pay them say $5 to $6 million, I highly doubt you're going to get a better corner than Byron Maxwell at $5 to $6 million a year, and you're probably going to have to guarantee that guy $20 to $30 million on the deal to get him to sign with you, which means you're committed to him for 2 to 3 years minimum. And if you cut him, prior, then you're stuck with all that dead cap space money. So I just wanted to point that out to people. This is actually a deal that gives Miami as you said, Keith, a viable corner you're not having a ton of money sunk into him. Now, what I think they're probably doing is they do want to renegotiate his deal, because next year Byron Maxwell would be in a kind of a precarious situation, because his guaranteed money would be gone, and Miami could just cut him at any point and save his remaining contract. And so they may be working out a deal with him where maybe they are trying to lower him down more to $5 or $6 million, and they'll like spread it out and give him some more money up front for a more feasible long-term contract. That's possible, but either way, it's not a bad risk move for the Dolphins. And I made the point earlier, and I honestly think you're close, Lewis, on the Pac-Man Jones things. I think the reason Brett Grimes is in limbo right now is I think the Dolphins want to have 2 veteran corners, and if Pac-Man Jones signs in the next day or two with Miami, I think then Brett Grimes is gone for sure. If he does it, they may be willing to roll with Maxwell and Grimes. Then, they may take a guy in the draft, or they may still want to see what they have with Tony Lippett and Bobby McCain. But either way, in today's NFL, a huge percentage of your defense has 3D backs on the field all the time. And really, if you're going to have any chance against some of these high-level teams like a Tom Brady, you've got to have 3 capable cover guys. And so Miami really had Brent Grimes, and that's it. I mean, you have no idea right now what Tony Lippett's going to develop into. You have no idea about Bobby McCain right now. Those guys showed some promise, but going into this season and relying on those guys as your 2 and 3 would be absolutely insane. So Miami had to get a solid veteran corner in here no matter what they do in the draft. So this did accomplish that in general. So like I said, I don't see any real major downside to this, under the assumption Miami didn't give up a bunch of draft picks or something like that.
And okay, so I want to move on to the Kiko Alonso part of this deal. But if you just wanted to let you guys know, if you want to call in, you can call 1-954-376-5704. We're talking about the Kiko Alonso Byron Maxwell trade. We're discussing whether we thought it was good, whether we thought it was bad, and the players involved, and of course what we speculate, what we think will happen with the compensatory, what exactly is it the Eagles are going to get. We'll find that out tomorrow. So if you want to call in and give us your thoughts, you can do that. And now let's talk a little bit about Kiko Alonso. Chad brought it up earlier. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was Keith who brought it up, I believe. He was the Rookie of the Year. He did an amazing job with the Bills. He played outside. He played inside. He was able to do a whole lot of stuff. And I believe that was under Jim Schwartz in Buffalo. And then Schwartz became the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia, and he got back with Alonso. And he apparently, I don't know if it was because he was hurt or if it was because there's these reports out there that Kiko Alonso is actually something of a dummy, and he doesn't really know how to. Those aren't my words. Those are words that I've seen used for Kiko Alonso, and he didn't really grasp the Jim Schwartz defense. And I don't know if that worries me or not, because on the one hand, there's the amazing guy in Buffalo, and then there was the not so amazing guy in Philadelphia. So, Keith, let's assume for a moment that Kiko Alonso does come back healthy, because that's what everybody's hoping. That's what everybody's looking for. Because obviously, if he's not healthy, then Kiko Alonso's not really going to do much of anything. So, if he is healthy, what do you expect from him, and where do you expect him to line up?
Speed is what I expect. That's what he brings to the table. He's a fast linebacker. He's good in coverage. His natural spot's probably the will, which is a little bit of a conflict when you realize that we already have Jelani Jenkins playing weak side linebacker. I'm not over the top, or I'm not over the moon when it comes to thinking about Alonso as middle linebacker. I don't love his take-on skills. He's a little bit undersized, too. I think he's in the 230, 235 range, which is quite undersized for the middle linebacker position, regardless of 4-3 or 3-4 scheme. But I mean, he's fast. I mean, a lot of his highlights you see. I mean, like he's good playing the ball as a linebacker. His sideline speed when he's healthy is excellent. He's got great range. He struggles getting off blocks, like, as I mentioned. Not a huge guy, but in terms of speed at the position, I mean, you really, for the most part, can't do much better. That's what he brings. So, I mean, if he's healthy, I know he sprained his ACL, which he had also torn previously last year. I think he was an inside linebacker in Philadelphia's 3-4 last year. I don't know. That just kind of seems like making apple pie with oranges. I don't think he's big enough to play interior in the 3-4. I don't think he's even close to being that big, especially because, I mean, you're expected to fill gaps more often. I mean, you got to be that guy to come downhill and stay on your assigned gap and really hit it like a ton of bricks. And I don't really think he's that kind of guy, but I do think he's an excellent blitzer. So I'm not a big fan of his take-on skills. In terms of overall speed, he can get after the quarterback. So that's something he can bring too. I'm not really sure where he fits. That, because I mean, weak side linebacker Jelani Jenkins wasn't there. You just say, okay, well, he's going there. Maybe they work him in as a middle linebacker. Maybe they find some sort of sub package thing for him. I'm not sure. But I mean, it's another buy low option. I mean, what's his salary? $941,000 or something. I mean, the guy is dirt cheap in terms of bringing in a guy who has years under his belt in terms of experience. So I mean, it's another buy low risk, high reward scenario for the Dolphins. If it works out and Alonso comes in, he's healthy, he plays well, fantastic. And if not, he really didn't give up much.
And yeah, that's what I was thinking just the other day. The whole Kiko Alonso thing. When I heard that he was being added on to the deal, I was really excited. However, the more I've heard, the more I'm starting to think, well, maybe I'm not sure. And it really has nothing to do with his injury. Like, we always assume that if we're bringing in somebody who was injured, that they will bounce back from the injury. We all assumed Louis Delmas would bounce back from the injury, and he did. And then he got hurt again because the Carolina Panthers fields was garbage, and then they lost Kelvin Benjamin in that same practice. So Yeah, thanks, Carolina. Can you imagine could you imagine just to get off topic for just a moment? Could you imagine if Kelvin Benjamin had been healthy the whole year? Do you think it would have changed anything for the Panthers?
I don't know. I mean, they were still incredible this year. I know people brought it up in the Super Bowl. I mean, they went 15-1 without him. I don't think they were that snake bitten once he went down. And I mean, honestly, I thought Denver had the corners to match up with a guy like him anyway. I mean, maybe it's a different story. It'll be fun to watch Cam Newton and Kelvin Benjamin play together through the next few years. I think that'll be exciting for the Panthers, and it's exciting if you just went 15-1 without your number one receiver. So.
Yep. So anyway, back on topic. Kiko Alonso. I heard Ian Wharton, the Bleacher Report man, and also one of our good friends. He also mentioned that he thinks that he is, I believe, the position he put him at was weak side linebacker, and that's where you mentioned, Keith. That's where Jelani Jenkins lines up. He's a speed guy. He's a blitzer, and first of all, the fact that we even describe him that way kind of gives me brief flashbacks to Philip Wheeler, but obviously Alonso's better than him, so I have to.
Oh yeah, he's a lot better than Philip Wheeler.
Yeah, I have to try and get that description out of my head because I heard fast linebacker who can blitz, and I'm like, oh no, not Philip Wheeler. But anyway, I digress. Kiko Alonso brings a lot more to the table when he's healthy, but I was really hoping that he would be able to take on that middle linebacker spot because, again, anything to get Kelvin Shepard out of there. I don't care. I don't even care if Koomisi winds up going in the middle again. Even he did a better job than Kelvin Shepard did. Like, that's not even hard to do. A lot of teams' backups could do better than Kelvin Shepard did. So, Chad, do you think we still need to get a middle linebacker, or can Kiko Alonso hold it down?
I don't. I think what Miami's doing is they are filling in holes in their team right now, and they'll be positioning themselves in the draft to get talented players. But you just got to look at the holes Miami had. And again, I am stepping back, and I've heard both sides of the Kiko Alonso. I've heard, oh, this guy's had injury issues. Yes, he has. He can't play the middle. I disagree with Ian Wart. I think he can play the middle. It depends on what you're doing. But, I mean, Zach Thomas was not a huge middle linebacker. And so it depends on what style you're doing. And I personally will take speed when I can get it. And when you look at where Miami was at, I mean, there's no doubt. I don't anybody have to be insane to say we should bring Kelvin Shepard back. And so we desperately needed to add talent to our linebacking core. And if you look at it, what were the Dolphins' options? Well, their options are you can try to get Miles Jack. Right now, I think that's a coin toss. As I've been looking at the mocks out there, I just don't know if Miles Jack is going to fall to number 8 in this draft.
Or 13,
and so
we don't know yet.
Well, even if they fall at 13, my point being is that's pretty risky to say we're just going to go into the draft and try to get Miles Jack, and then you have to sit there and just hope he falls to you. And so I wasn't too excited with doing that big of a risk for Miami's defense. And if you don't get him, then what are you doing? Re-signing Kelvin Shepard or trying to move Koomisi back to the middle? So they got a guy that's functional that can stick in there, because I look at what else are you going to do? You're going to go sign Laurinaitis. And so I would rather have Kiko Alonso than James Laurinaitis, where they're at careers right now. And the other issue is money. And so if we wanted to sign like James Laurinaitis to be our middle linebacker, you're going to have to pay that guy, a 2 or 3 year deal. You're going to have to guarantee him probably $10 to $15 million and put a ton of money into him. Kiko Alonso, Keith already pointed out, he's $900,000 right now. That's peanuts for an NFL football player. And so, they're getting a upgrade in talent without putting a bunch of money into it. And so, to me, that's a really good move. I think a lot of people don't realize how tall he is. Kiko Alonso is 6'3", which is, that's a tall middle linebacker. That's more like you guys probably remember Carlos Dansby. He's more into that range. And I think part of what Miami's doing is they're making their defense a little more versatile. Right now they obviously had serious issues stopping the run. And so Kiko Alonso, I absolutely have no doubt would be an upgrade over Kelvin Shepard at middle linebacker. And what people tend to do is they're looking at the middle linebackers in the NFL. Is he going to be like somebody like Navarro Bowman or whatever, that guy from the 49ers? No. I mean, he's not an unbelievable stud middle linebacker, but did he just upgrade where the team had from last year relative to what they had available to go get? He absolutely did that. And so that's why I feel like it's a good move for the Dolphins at what they have available on their team. It is questionable, though, whether he'll hold up at middle linebacker, but if they
Hey
do
Chad.
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, man. We actually have a caller. Caller,
Go ahead.
who are you?
Hey, not bad. How about yourself, guys?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm sorry. I didn't catch your name?
Oh, it's Tony. I'm sorry. It's Tom. Tony.
Oh, nice to meet you, man. So, what's on your mind today?
I'm just listening to y'all guys talking about the trade with Philadelphia and Byron Maxwell, and I know you're talking about Kiko Alonso right now and his possible ability to play inside. I'm a big Florida State fan, so I'm familiar with the kid that's playing inside linebacker for the Jags right now, Telvin Smith. Telvin is about 225, 230. And he's played well for the Jags inside. And, obviously Kiko is not a huge inside linebacker, but, if you play with instincts and you sort of, feel your way around, I think you can be effective. Telvin has been effective, and I think Kiko can be effective as well. And he gives you playmaking ability. I mean, y'all talked about the injury concerns, and that's obviously a big factor with Kiko, but going back to the 1 year that he was healthy with Buffalo, he had over 150 tackles and 4 interceptions. I mean, when is the last time the Dolphins had a linebacker that had more than 1 interception in the season? I mean, that's the thing that I like about Kiko. I think he gives you playmaking ability, and you get him on the cheap right now in regards to his contract. So you hope second year removed from the injury he suffered in Buffalo, perhaps in a scheme more comfortable for him, he can perform closer to what he did with the Bills. Because if he does, I think you've got a kid that's a good football player.
Yeah, I agree absolutely with you, Tony. And I remember Telvin Smith, the Dolphins having a really difficult time with him when I don't know if it was this year, but last year when they played him, he was all over the place. And that's what I said. There's no substitute for a guy that can get sideline to sideline. I mean, obviously, Alonso's not a heavy linebacker like a Raglan, where you can stick him in there and have him, hit the point of attack. But so much for linebackers is getting off blocks and proper angles and stuff, and what kind of instincts they have. And I definitely feel Alonso's a significant upgrade over Kelvin Shepard for the team.
Yeah, no question about that. But that trade has been highly discussed. I follow y'all guys on Twitter, and I also write a blog for PhinFever.com. So getting some of the feedback from those guys. I mean, some understand the trade, some want to whine and moan and groan about it, and there's nothing you can do about that. I mean, I'm more than willing to see how things play out. I agree with y'all guys said about Byron Maxwell. I like Byron's size. I think he didn't have as bad a season as it seems. I think the thing, like y'all said, I think the thing that people associate with Byron is he signed lockdown, cornerback money, and he's not. To me, he's not that caliber of cornerback. I think he's a good cornerback, but I mean, he's not that caliber of cornerback that you can put him out there. I mean, I think the game people remember with Byron is the game against the Falcons where Julio Jones just had his way with him. But Julio's gonna give anybody problems. And people want to bring that game up against the Falcons, but I'm like, if you put Julio, I think Byron, is much better in his own scheme that Vance Joseph wants to run. Phil Jones out there against pretty much any cornerback one-on-one and give the quarterback time to throw. He's gonna make plays. Like y'all guys have been saying, he's a bigger corner that Miami's been looking for. And I think a change of scenery would be good for him. A change of scheme would definitely be good for him. And like you said, I know Miami has been working to restructure his contract. I've been seeing it on Twitter that they've been working to restructure his contract. So I think with that, I'm like y'all guys. I'm waiting to see what the compensation is going to be. I mean, I know some folks are already, already the process. I think that makes it more feasible for Miami in regards to the trade also. are upset with the fact that Miami might be swapping picks with Philadelphia. I mean, I'm like, if it's just a swap of first-round picks, I mean, I can live with that. I'd hate to give up, supposedly it might be a fourth-round pick that Miami gave up along with swapping as well. So, you hate to give up picks when you're a team like Miami that sort of needs all the draft picks they can get as far as I'm concerned. But when you get two players that could possibly help you out the way Kiko and Byron can, I think that's part of the process that you go through. So, I think it's going to work out for Miami. I think it's going to be a good trade for him. The Mario Williams signing, I think, you're getting a guy with him that I think is going to be motivated, because all I've read is he quit, he's this, he's that, slowly teammates were bashing him and so forth. So if you're a player like Mario Williams, I think you got some pride about yourself. I think now that you're getting into a situation where you in a scheme where you're more comfortable in a 4-3 defense where you're not asked to drop into coverage, I think he's hearing all the talk about him and how he quit and how he was a dog. I think you're going to get a motivated Mario Williams. Now, who's all going to be around him, we don't know. I mean, obviously, all of that is going to play out here in the next few days. But I'm anxious to see how things are going to play out with tomorrow, and what tomorrow is going to bring, and who Miami is looking at, and who's going to be signed probably right off the bat. I'm hearing a lot of talk about Alex Boone, and some of the guards. Obviously, y'all guys probably know more about what Miami is looking at doing from that standpoint than me. But I'm looking forward to tomorrow whenever the festivities kick off and you start signing guys.
Yep, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Anything else you wanted to talk about, Tony?
No, I mean, I'll listen to y'all guys the rest of the way, and I'll probably maybe tweet you here or there, okay?
All right. So thanks for calling, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, guys. Take care, fellas.
All right.
Just something to go with what he said there on Byron Maxwell. I was talking about the availability, and so you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but Trumaine Johnson got protected, right? Didn't he get franchised?
Yeah, he got the franchise tag. He's done.
And so, I mean, literally, the Dolphins would have been looking at, like, do you get a Janoris Jenkins, or it gets crazy. Do you talk about Sean Smith? And those are what you're up against. And I honestly think I'd take Byron Maxwell over giving those guys a much more higher guaranteed money deal that you'd have to do to get them. So, again, I agree with what Tony said. Is Byron Maxwell somebody that you can play in defense like you can, like a Patrick Peterson or somebody? No, he's not this unbelievable talented cornerback, and his deal will need to be done long term. But Miami didn't give him the guaranteed money, the big money for that, and I still think he's probably a better option than what else could have Miami done? Their only other option is to go into the draft and using the 8th overall pick on a corner. It really is.
I honestly think that Byron Maxwell is probably the Trumaine Johnson contingency plan in Miami's front office. I mean, we saw a lot of people report that they were in it for Trumaine Johnson. So he gets
that was the reason I threw Trumaine Johnson. And I mean, you can throw Josh Norman out there too. Those two corners, I would say, I would take them over Byron Maxwell right now. But neither one of them are even available. That's the thing.
Well, Janoris Jenkins is kind of would harken back to what we've had at corner. I mean, I would say he's probably like a weird to say, but kind of like a Brent Grimes style corner. Like if you're really looking for these guys who are going to come up and at times punch you in the mouth, take on the run, great short area burst, you're not looking at guys like you mentioned Sean Smith, and I know that you also said a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned the whole fiasco where they were trying to turn Sean Smith into a zone corner when that's not his deal. He's a press man corner all the way. Byron Maxwell is in many ways the opposite. I mean, he is incredibly fast. I think that his official 40 time is like a low 4.4. He's got that great short area burst. I mean, he'll hit. He's got the great take on skills. So for Miami, it makes sense that guy, because Trumaine Johnson brings a lot of that to the table too. So I mean, I could see the Byron Maxwell move as a contingency plan for Trumaine Johnson. Janoris Jenkins, I don't think for the most part fits what Vance Joseph wants to do. I think also some of the corners in the draft do those, but it still won't surprise me if they take a guy, like even if they did swap picks and they're at number 13, two of the better corners in this draft, Eli Apple and William Jackson III, are both guys who would work really, really well in zone coverage, especially Jackson. So, I mean, that becomes an option.
Yeah, I think they'll be, and they'd be in the discussion at the 13th overall pick too, Keith. I mean, in terms of they'll be on the board.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you lose out on Vernon Hargreaves, who would also been an outstanding zone corner, and everything I've seen suggests that Philadelphia traded up to get that guy. That was someone they had great interest in. And I was trying to explain this on Twitter today, and I don't think I think people just either disagree with this point outright, or they're just not willing to see it. But when you trade out of the top 10, in some instances, depending on the draft you're in, and for the Dolphins in a defense-heavy draft, they get out of the top 10 potentially. They've opened up their options a little bit. You have a little bit of flexibility, and people say, like, well, no, you're just taking out leftovers. No, that's not true. You're not taking an inside linebacker at number 8 unless it's like a Luke Kuechly. At number 13, you'd more consider that, but you're not going to take a guy like that over DeForest Buckner or over Vernon Hargreaves. You're not taking Eli Apple or William Jackson at 8, even though those guys might be the best fits for what you want to do on defense. There's a lot of guys that now you've opened yourself up to. Shaq Lawson, you're probably not taking him at number 8. Shaq Lawson, you can take at 13 if you want to add a pass rusher. So now you've got the flexibility. Now there are more positions that come in. The fact that you've come down a little bit, even if you're looking at offensive tackle, which I don't really expect to happen, but I kept talking about Ronnie Stanley. I thought that Osemele move today, where he signed with the Raiders, means that I think Baltimore's absolutely taking an offensive tackle at 6 overall. But I digress. I mean, it opens up your options a little bit. Now you have access to guys that might better fit what you want to do on the defensive side of the ball. Guys, maybe Vance Joseph likes more. But if you're at number 8, is there a real value there? Maybe they would have tried to trade down anyway if like a DeForest Buckner fell. Maybe they try to get Chicago to bite, or another team that's looking for a guy who can have that Justin Tuck type role in a 4-3 or a 5-tech in a 3-4. So it's okay if you trade down to 13 in this draft, because there are some guys who can really do what Miami wants to do on the perimeter defensively, and that pass rusher too. I mean, so you can't write that off, and that linebacker. So, I mean, all positions in play. I think this is a good thing. And one other point I want to bring up that our guest just mentioned is I'm definitely not saying that Alonzo can't play the middle. I think that he's physically gifted enough to pretty much play just about anywhere at linebacker and probably give you something. It's just that I worry about the taking on the run when you're that light, and if you're a middle linebacker, that's a big part of the job. I always get a little hesitant whenever you get a middle linebacker who's under 240 pounds, but it can be done. I mean, I understand that it was in a different era, but I think Jack Lambert played for the Steelers at middle linebacker at like 220 pounds, and soaking wet. I've heard that was a trumped up weight anyway. So, I mean, talent's always going to win out. And if Alonzo gets in there and he's comfortable, then, I mean, then it works. But I definitely get a little bit gun-shy whenever you have guys who give up a little bit in weight, especially if you're expecting them to be able to take on the run, to be able to downhill and smash their gaps and just really get after it. I mean, I get a little iffy on that. If it works, it works.
Well, it'll depend a lot on scheme, Keith. I think one thing Miami has done is they've absolutely improved their run defense, and I think that's what the moves are designed to do. And as much as the Olivier Vernon can do a lot of things and Cameron Wake can do a lot of things, neither one of those guys are in the vicinity of the ability to dominate the line of scrimmage in terms of the run game as Mario Williams. I mean, he's huge, and he'll be much more effective at stopping the run. He probably isn't the same level of pure pass rusher that Cameron Wake is or something, but he is going to help bring some stability to the run game, as is Byron Maxwell. Brent Grimes is terrible at defending the run, not because he's a bad player, he's just little, and so you can't expect Brett Grimes to come up and drop, a 220, 230-pound running back when he gets out in space, who's going to come in and lower his shoulder. Brent Grimes is just trying to keep himself alive in those matchups. And so having a physical corner that can come up and stick a running back will also benefit Miami's running game greatly. And, I agree that Kiko Alonso is not a big linebacker that's going to come up, take on a guard, shove the guard off, and then stick the back in the hole. He's definitely going to have to take angles. But one of the issues Miami had last year is the teams just fanatically double team Sue and cut him. And, when you use that tactic as an offensive lineman, when you go for the route of cutting them, you've given yourself up on the play. So your lineman drops to the ground to take Sue out of the play, and what you need to counter that is a very fast linebacker that gets into the hole that creates havoc into the backfield. You want a middle linebacker that it's very dangerous to put your center or guard on the ground and have him be able to run in there free. And so I think he could be a good fit with Ndamukong Suh versus bringing in a really, thumper. But with that being said, I it's going to be interesting to see for sure what their plans are with Alonso. But he's 6'3". I don't think he could cover him all game, but he's the guy that maybe you feel a bit more comfortable with from time to time matching up on a Rob Gronkowski, because of his height. And so I do think they've added at least an element of increased flexibility and improved run defense right now with the new personnel they've brought in.
Well, that speed is why he's such a good blitzer, too. I mean, he wins with speed. It's just awfully hard to be able to put a hat on a hat with that guy. I mean, he's just blazing by you, and you saw a lot of the highlights that he had in Buffalo. I mean, he's just the burst he has is impressive, and we already mentioned the sideline speed. I mean, that guy can move, which is why if you're getting him in and he's healthy, and you hope that knee holds up. I mean, as I mentioned, this is a buy low option that could really, really work out well for Miami, and it's funny because I mean, you have people looking at Alonso and Maxwell as like these almost reclamation projects, and it's kind of funny to think that, I mean, a year ago it made perfect sense that they traded Kiko Alonso for LaShawn McCoy. It made perfect sense that the Eagles threw a boatload of money at Byron Maxwell. So, I mean, are you getting the 2015 version, or does Vance Joseph know how to put these guys in position where you can get out of them what people saw in them with their previous teams? And I like to think that that'll work, that can happen in Miami.
Yeah, I hope so. Go ahead, Lewis.
Yeah, okay. So what I want to know, Keith, you already talked about the whole trade thing, and then you talk about the draft. There's still some guys that you could get at 13. So you obviously are not. You wouldn't exactly be heartbroken over the fact that if Miami and Philly really did trade first round picks, you wouldn't exactly be that upset about it. But with that said, how much do you feel like would have been too much? Like, let's say the trade comes down tomorrow and it turns out that it was too much. What is too much for you?
My first thought when it became clear yesterday that Alonso and Maxwell were going to Miami was I just didn't want anything that was going to cave in Miami's day two plans. So I didn't want a third-round pick. Definitely didn't want a 2. Anything on day 3 I felt was negotiable. So, like, if it had been a 4, not ideal, but fine. A lot of people thought I'd be like a 5. I heard like a 5 and a 6. I can live with that. That's fine. If you're swapping picks in the first round, though, and as I mentioned, you're going from 8 to 13, not the end of the world. The only problem there is that every team behind Miami, sitting at number 8 currently, also is likely going to take defense. I mean, Tampa's expected to take defense, Giants, Bears, definitely the New Orleans Saints at 12. So, I mean, you've got a lot, likely 4 defensive picks coming off the board between that pick you jumped from 8 to 13. If you're swapping those picks, though, I'm not comfortable giving up really anything else probably above a 5. Which is why, I didn't throw a tantrum. I mean, you guys saw Twitter today. I mean, it turned into just an absolute zoo at one point when it was the rumor. At first, it came through that they thought it was going to be that swap of picks and Miami was going to get an additional 4th. And it's like, well, hey, that's fine. That's great. And then it turned out that, well, no, we misread it, and now it's a swap of picks, and Miami's giving a fourth. And then, it turned at that point. And then it comes out that you saw, you're the one who retweeted that message I saw where that one Philadelphia beat writer said it's not as, from what I've seen, it's not as good as you people think, essentially. I think he called it erroneously reported. So, I don't know if it's just a simple swap of picks. Yeah, you can go ahead and just start your draft playing at 13, and it's no big deal. But if you're giving up a 4, if it happens, it happens. But I would not call that ideal given the situation.
Yeah, I if it's just the swap of the picks in the round, I think that's a pretty fair trade. I think if Miami's getting additional picks, I think it's definitely a win for the Dolphins on the trade. If Miami's giving up a late pick like a 6th or a 7th, I don't see that as I'm still calling it pretty fair. If Miami's giving up anything a 5th or higher, I would say that's probably more beneficial to Philadelphia because Philadelphia wanted to get Byron Maxwell out of there. And so I don't know that they wanted to get Kiko Alonso out of there, but it was clear that they were making a statement that we are completely making this as far away from a Chip Kelly team as we can make it. And so they were just shipping all of his moves out of town. But with that being said, that's where I'm at. If it's Miami giving up a 4th, then I won't be too thrilled because Miami right now with the Ndamukong Suh contract, and being able to bring in these guys like Mario Williams and stuff, they've got to have access to some young, capable talent. And, Terrence Fede is an exceptional example of a late-round draft pick that is giving them depth on the defensive end. He doesn't necessarily going to come in and be a dominant defensive end that's going to be Pro Bowler, but he's a guy who's functionally capable enough to come in and play at a level where you can play him. And they need to be able to get that because football isn't all about just your starting talent. It's about what kind of depth you have to sustain through 16 games and still field a competitive team. And Miami absolutely needs an offensive tackle for depth. They absolutely need probably another corner. They could use a safety and not necessarily starters, just guys that they can, afford to fit on the roster that have the talent to play in the NFL. And the way where they get that is in those mid-round picks. So those are very important picks for the Dolphins. So anything above a 5th plus a swap in first, I would be not real thrilled about. So that's where I would go, Lewis.
Well, Mike Tannenbaum has not exactly shown a whole lot of value for draft picks in the past. So hopefully, maybe we'll see what happens tomorrow. It should come out fair and square, all done, confirmed, kind of a thing. Because with all the speculation, with all the stuff that's going on, we really don't know. Are we getting a 4th? Are they getting a 4th? Or is nothing going to happen? Is it a first-round draft pick swap? Maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's a lot worse, or maybe it's a lot better for us. There really is no way to tell until tomorrow because there have been rumors in every direction.
One thing real quick I'll throw at that, Lewis, that people do overlook is if they do swap the 8th to the 13th, there is a benefit to the Dolphins in that if the guy they want is going to be there at 13 anyway, I'm just saying, let's say they want Elliott, the running back from Ohio State. Let's say they want him. There's a pretty good chance he'll be at 13 if he's not as he would be at 8. But the salary changes dramatically. The further down you go in the first round, the less of a cap hit that becomes. And so if Miami's trying to keep their cap number down a little bit, one way to actually successfully do that, if you can get the same guy and fall back in the first round, it actually benefits you from a cap standpoint.
I think Elliott definitely is there too. I think Houston was expected to be the first team into Elliott. We know as of today that's probably going to change. But I think Ezekiel Elliott is, for some reason, is an under-the-radar guy. He's an outstanding back. He's as good of a blocking back as you will ever see. He's good at catching the ball in the backfield.
But is he as flashy as Todd Gurley?
Todd, it's really unfair to compare anyone to Todd Gurley.
That's why he's under the radar.
No. I totally disagree on that because just because you're not Todd Gurley doesn't mean you're going to go under the radar. There's been plenty of running back in previous years where maybe you're a really good back. You do a lot of things well. I would compare Ezekiel Elliott to. I think he looks far better than Trent Richardson did at Alabama, and Trent Richardson went third overall in that draft. So, I mean, comparing him to Todd Gurley, I think is a bit disingenuous because, I mean, it'd be like saying, well, he's not an Eric Dickerson or, he's not an Adrian Peterson. No, you don't have those guys out there too often. But Ezekiel Elliott is hands down the best back in this draft. And I mentioned he does some things at an insanely high level. But the thing is comes in, it's a defensive-heavy draft. Got all the talk about the quarterbacks. And Ohio State running backs, I mean, traditionally the past couple of years haven't gotten that much attention. So.
No, and he would be. Is he going to? Yeah, I know Todd Gurley. I'm not saying he's the next Adrian Peterson, but would he be a sufficient replacement for Lamar Miller? That's the real question because Lamar Miller obviously is going to get paid. So let's say he gets paid $5 million a year, and you got to put a big guarantee into him. You don't have to pay near that amount to Elliott. And so, again, from a salary cap standpoint, maybe that's actually making more sense for the Dolphins. And I think Elliott becomes a legitimate possibility if they get Pac-Man. If Miami brings in another corner, or if they keep Brent Grimes so that they have their two starters on the outside, I think then he suddenly gets into play at the 13th pick. If that's the trade, I think he suddenly is in the conversation. Yep.
Yeah, I think you're right on.
So let's move on to something that's not related to the trade. Okay, let's talk about this. Mario Williams, guys. Super Mario's coming to Miami, and of course there was the whole issue about he didn't like Rex. He checked out this past year. He's all washed up, and he's just not good anymore. Personally, I don't agree with that at all. But he's coming, and it's going to be a 2-year deal, $8 million per year, kind of a deal. So let's just go crazy. Let's just say it like this: 2 years, $16 million. So we don't know the exact details of the contract just yet, but essentially he's going to be coming in and replacing Olivier Vernon, since all reports indicate, including Ian Rappaport, who said this. And when he says something, I feel pretty comfortable about it. Apparently, Cameron Wake is not going anywhere anytime soon, so that makes me feel better about what the defensive line could look like. So we would have Mario Williams, Cameron Wake, Ndamukong Suh, and Earl Mitchell / Jordan Phillips. We don't know which just yet. We'll see what happens after training camp and all that. So, but there is some stuff about it. People are worried about his effort levels. People are worried about whether he's just going to check out if things don't go wrong, if things don't start going right when the season starts. So I'm going to start with you, Chad. What are your thoughts on the Mario Williams pickup? Do you think this was a good move? Do you think that Miami is just trying to make a big splash and they weren't really serious about the whole thing and they just overpaid for another veteran guy who's not really going to do much?
I absolutely don't think they overpaid for him. Everything I was hearing is that Mario Williams was looking for $10 million a year, and I thought, you're going to be paying him that. Then you got to start thinking about Wake and Vernon and stuff because you're getting closer up to their numbers. But they're only paying him $8 million, a year. That's his market. That's the market for a good defensive end in the NFL. And I don't think he's washed up. I do understand there was a fallout in Buffalo with Rex, but there's no major injury in there. And this is a guy who was dominant. He was one of the better defensive ends in the league for the last 3 years. So I'm not too worried about that, to be honest. And I can tell you right now, teams are going to be a little nervous because if Mario Williams comes in shape and ready to go, teams better buckle up when you can swap people around and you can run a stunt with Ndamukong Suh and Mario Williams, because you've got two of the best bull rushers in the league who you don't even know who's going to have to block them from time to time. And if you don't have a very competent guard and tackle right beside each other, they're going to just eat people alive. And so that part of it I'm excited about, because the issue I've had all along is I know how much people have liked Vernon and Wake. Both of those guys are built to rush the passer. They're not big run stuffing guys, and Mario Williams is a very big physical D end, and that's something Miami's, I think, needed for a while. And so I know Deion Jordan was supposed to be that guy, but they've got him now. Miami still is going to have to address long term the defensive end. I can't imagine that probably within the first 3 rounds, they're not going to take another defensive end in this draft. But, for this season, if Wake makes it back in particular, so we can work with Cameron Wake. Can you imagine playing Mario Williams, on the left side, on a first and second down, and then swapping him around and then bringing a fresh Cameron Wake in on third down to rush the passer? The Dolphins have really plugged that hole where they're no longer desperate in the defensive end position. And so, again, that's keeps all their options open in the draft. And I didn't see anybody else out there. I didn't like the Giants guy, Pierre Paul guy with the injured hand. I just don't know how effective he's going to be with that hand overall. I know he can rush the passer, but is he really an every down defensive end? And Charles Johnson, there wasn't anybody else out there on the free agent market that stood out to me as somebody that was a surefire player to get in here. So I like it.
I have no idea why Buffalo used Mario Williams as an outside linebacker, because that guy is, close to 290 pounds? I mean, he is enormous. I would have thrown him at the 5 technique before I used him at outside linebacker, given his size, strength, and skill set. So I'm not making excuses for whatever lack of motivation he had in Buffalo. Whatever happened between Rex and Mario Williams isn't something that I'm privy to. But, I mean, you're also getting a guy who now has something to prove. Because you have people out there saying he is lazy, that he is washed up, all this other nonsense that has been out there. And, by the way, he gets to play his old team twice a year. So, I mean, that's a huge win. And the fact that you've got all this talk about Olivier Vernon getting close to $15 million on the market, and the Dolphins just signed Mario Williams for, almost half that. So, I mean, that's awesome. So then you get him in there, hopefully you get him motivated, you put him back in his natural position. I love the idea of Wake filling Williams. I think that could be really cool. I mean, there's just a lot of options you have in there.
And there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen with Mario Williams. There was, I believe it was, I don't remember who it was who said it. I think it was Cian Fahey. I don't even know how you say his name, but supposedly he was bringing up how Mario Williams was a left defensive end in, what was it? Sometime, I think it was during his time in Houston, maybe in 2007 or something.
He played on the right a lot in Houston, Lewis, and he played on the left in Buffalo. I personally think he can play either side effectively, more than likely. But what I like the idea is getting him beside Sue, because Mario Williams is a very difficult guy one-on-one to block from a power standpoint. I mean, I think you guys probably all remember which turnstile right tackle who was trying to block him when he just pretty much ran the tackle into Ryan Tannehill and caused a fumble a couple
Tyson
of years ago.
Claybo.
Yeah, ask Tyson Claybo what it's like to try to anchor and block Mario Williams one-on-one. And so the point I'm making is, if you mix him in with Sue and run stunts and not quite sure who you're matching up one-on-one, that's a very difficult assignment to stop those guys from breaking your offensive line down and really disrupting whatever you're trying to do on offense. And so he brings a much bigger power element into the game than Wake or Vernon. I mean, Cameron Wake is just so unbelievably quick off the snap. He beats guys by getting around them or ducking under them. Mario Williams can literally just run your tackle right over if you don't have a good stout tackle in there. And so he gives a dynamic where if you're running like something Miami likes to do, when you got somebody like Juwan James in there, you can match a Mario Williams up on a tackle like that and just have him shove that guy back into the backfield all game long, throwing off what they're trying to do. If they bring in a real heavy tackle to counter that, and you have Cameron Wake, then you can just turn Cameron Wake loose all game and see if that guy can stop him from beating around the edge all game. And so it gives them some really fun options to play with on defense. So I love it.
And something that also should be mentioned is Mario Williams is actually very good against the run as well. So that's actually going to be a big time help to the Dolphins' defensive line. Ndamukong Suh's there to do pass rushing, and of course Mario Williams there to also stop against the run, which of course is probably the biggest problem that Miami's had for the past couple of years now, is just stopping the run. So Mario Williams will definitely help that out. And Well, I can't really think of much else to say about him. I mean, he's going to be a big help, and Miami still has some room to work with. They restructured Jordan Cameron, so now he's making him. He's going to be hit against the cap as about the same kind of people as Julius Thomas and Kyle Rudolph for the Minnesota Vikings, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to be somewhere around the same money as Dwayne Allen. So I think it's a pretty good deal for Jordan Cameron. Like I've always said, I keep saying that he was horribly misused in the Joe Philbin, Bill Lazor regime. I mean, you turned this seam threat super weapon for the Cleveland Browns. He balled with the Cleveland Browns. If he sucks in Miami, that should be a major indicator that something is very, very wrong, and it's not his concussions. He was used badly. They tried to turn him into a blocker. It fell apart, and it turned into a big problem for the Miami Dolphins. He did not turn out to be Jordan Cameron of the Cleveland Browns. He became Jordan Cameron of the Miami Dolphins. That's pretty sad that we have to make that distinction. So hopefully Jordan Cameron on the Dolphins can become Cleveland Brown Jordan Cameron again under Adam Gase. Adam Gase seems to really like him. He talked about him at the combine. So what do you guys think about the restructure? Would you have been willing to keep him at his current cap hit? I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Would you have been willing to keep him even at the cap hit before his restructure?
I'll let Keith go first. I was just talking. Well, maybe he's not there. I'll go. On Jordan Cameron, I think they were going to more than likely keep him, but they had all the leverage because he didn't have a whole lot of guaranteed money on his contract. He just was a big yearly contract, and I think what Jordan Cameron wants, he knew if he becomes a free agent into this market, Jordan Cameron probably was going to get a big, massive deal because he has the concussion history and he had an off year. So this makes sense for both teams. Miami had a lot of holes this year to fill. I don't think they wanted to spend high draft picks. I don't think they wanted to spend a big contract in the market. And so Cameron brings in a very capable receiving tight end. They'll still have him paired with Deion Sims, which gives them a very capable two tight end set. And so he's only doing this extra year. So if Adam Gase, does with Jordan Cameron what he was doing with the tight ends in Chicago, he'll probably get paid well in the next year. I don't know if it'll be by the Dolphins or not, but he's a great 1 year option right now for them to worry about tight end next year.
And
said he's an Adam Gase favorite. Yeah, my phone was it muted itself for some reason.
No worries.
I think that Cameron's an Adam Gase favorite. I think that he's the kind of the flexed out tight end who can create a lot of matchup problems, which is going to be a big part of Adam Gase's offense early on as everything gets acclimated. So I think that he probably would have been kept at that original cap hit, but the restructure is huge, and it's great that he's sticking around. I think that Miami's an ideal place for Jordan Cameron too. I think they're going to use him like he's going out of style this year, as opposed to last year where it just for some reason things didn't get on the same page. I don't know if it was a leftover Philbin regime, just overall fogginess. I don't know, but he should have been a bigger part of the game plan. Wasn't. I expect that to change this year though.
And let's talk about some more Dolphins free agents that are probably gonna hit the road. The two big ones, Olivier Vernon and Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller, last we heard, is probably going to sign with the Houston Texans, which is very sad for me because I thought if there was anybody that needed to be re-signed, it was Lamar Miller. So right now, Jay Ajayi, he's the running back in Miami. Guys, thoughts on Lamar Miller? Probably out of here.
Well, I agree with you, Lewis. I don't want to see Lamar Miller go out of here. I think he's a solid running back. I don't think Lamar Miller, though, has done anything that stands out to me that he's an elite running back. Teams don't have to game plan for Lamar Miller like they do for an Adrian Peterson or a Todd Gurley or anything like that. So I think it's the position in football more than any I don't like to put a bunch of money in because running backs get beat down every game. And so you're looking at a player who's going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times on average and just get the snot beat out of them. And it's a hard position to keep healthy. I mean, running backs get hurt all the time because they take the brunt of the punishment on those handoffs. And so it makes me nervous to put a huge contract into a running back because I wonder how much is he going to be on the field and will he stay healthy? Now, I understand why Lamar Miller is getting one because he is healthy and he's still really young, but I feel like Miami, where they're at right now, they would be much better served to address the other areas of their team and, fill that running back position the best they can with somebody else. Now, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out because, like I said, maybe they're looking at Elliott in the draft. I would love that as a replacement for Lamar Miller. I feel like that would almost be an upgrade for Miami. Or they may just look for somebody to fill it for a year or two and push it, for a season or two away, where somebody like Matt Forte would make a lot of sense in Miami. And so I think Miami has options. I'm not, it's not the end of the world. From what I've heard, like I said, I don't have sources in the team. I'm going secondhand, but it sounded to me like Miami made him a solid offer. And I'm not convinced Lamar Miller wanted to even stay in Miami. I've made that comment a few times. I think he maybe just wanted to get out. And so I don't even know if it's about the money, but I can't justify paying a running back, in the $4 to $5 million range.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I think he's an excellent one-cut runner, low mileage. I mean, he's gotten better as a blocking back too. But the report came out today that he was looking for that DeMarco Murray money, which is north of $8 million a year. And given what the Dolphins need to address on the defensive side of the ball in free agency and the draft, that's awfully rich. And so you don't see running backs really cash in on their second contract too often. I mean, not anymore. So I mean, it sucks that, especially he's going to the Texans, because I hate that team. But it does open the door for someone like Ezekiel Elliott, who is a complete back. I mean, that guy does pretty much everything well, and he is the best blocking back you will ever see in your life. So in terms of added protection on certain downs, he brings that as well. And he ran a great time in Indianapolis at the Combine. So not a huge fan of drafting running backs in the first round anymore, but if you're going to, Ezekiel Elliott is worthy of that, in my opinion. So, J.A. is your guy now. I expect that, obviously, to add to that one way or another. If it's the first round of the draft, if it's day 2, day 3, that they're just able to bring in a couple of guys on the cheap. I don't know, but this is going to be a whole new look in the backfield outside of Ajayi.
And that's gonna. If Ezekiel Elliott does turn out to be the pick, I guess I won't be too upset about it. We do need a good running back to help out Ryan Tannehill as much as we can, because
Yeah.
Let's give Tannehill everything, and then we can finally stop with the excuses. And that's just my case on this. So so the other one, of course, Olivier Vernon, likely to have the transition tag taken off of him by tomorrow. So he will be a free agent, and if somebody picks him up, we probably will get compensation, assuming we don't pick up a guy of equal value. Apparently, he's being valued at this top pass rusher money, so we could wind up getting a 3rd or 4th round compensation pick in 2017. So, guys, thoughts on Olivier Vernon?
Sorry to see him go.
That's fine. You said you're sorry to see him go?
I mean, yeah, I think, he's a good player. I don't think he's nearly what people think he's going to get. I think that he's a good 4-3 defensive end. He's a guy who wins with strength. But he's inconsistent against the run. He's never a guy who's going to be the equivalent of a basketball player who creates his own shot. He's not a guy who creates his own sacks. I know there's been a lot of narrative out there about that. It's correct. He's a cleanup guy, a good player, a good second banana at defensive end. But if you're bringing him in thinking that guy is gonna have Mario Williams like impact where Mario Williams has been, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed, and more so if you're paying him that kind of money, which it looks like he's going to get close.
Yeah, I think he's going to get whoever signs him. I think they're way overpaying. Probably he did finish out the second half of the season strong, but all the years I saw Olivier Vernon play, I never saw him take over a game like I saw Cameron Wake take over some games. Where he literally just changes the course of the game sometimes. And Olivier Vernon is just more of he's not a bad football player. He's definitely a solid defensive end. He's young. you can sign him to a team and plug him in, but if you're expecting him to be your stud pass rusher, you're probably gonna be disappointed because that's not what he is. And so I honestly think, guys, I think he's gonna be getting somewhere 13, 14 million a year. I think he's going to get an astronomical contract because he is the number one free agent defensive end right now because of his age. I mean, he's like 25 years old, so he's easy to give a 5-year deal to, feeling like he'll play all 5 years. So, but the amount of money that he's going to get paid, I don't know. I mean, if you're a team like maybe the Raiders or something, and you just have a pile of cap space built up, they could probably afford to pay a good but not great defensive end that kind of money and be fine. But for somebody like the Dolphins, there's just no way they can afford him. That's just the reality of it right now. And he's not going to change your games or your season enough to justify that kind of money. I mean, they've got to get guys that are going to make impact. They desperately need an inside linebacker who's going to make some tackles for losses during the game. And they definitely need a guy that when it's one-on-one, he's going to win a lot of those matchups and create turnovers and fumbles. And that's just not Olivier Vernon. So I was hopeful that they didn't do something crazy like give him a pile of money, and they didn't do that. So that's a good thing. And no lightning is that compensation, even if it's a fourth round pick. Fourth round pick can be a really solid football player, and so if you throw in the fact that I'm going to get Mario Williams, who's a bigger, better run defender probably than Olivier Vernon, maybe not the pass rusher, but a better run defender, and you're going to give me the third or fourth, that's definitely the route I would want to go anyway.
Yeah, Lamar Miller was a fourth round pick.
Yeah, exactly. You can get, even if you, like I was saying earlier, even if you don't get the starters, you need 53 men when the injuries happen, and you need somebody that you can insert that isn't like terrible. That fourth round pick could be your third tackle, and that could become a very important player. And so, if we get the compensation on Lamar Miller and Olivier Vernon next year, that's very valuable.
And I think the only thing left to cover is Cameron Wake. So I'm going to ask what you guys think about this before we I think we have a couple of things in the chat room that we need to talk about this, and we're going to do it real quickly after this. But what are your thoughts on the whole Cameron Wake situation? Assuming he does stay, which is all indications at the moment are that he will. Are you okay with his cap hit? And I'll start with I'll start with Keith because I need to
go for it, Keith.
Yeah, I need to moderate. Okay.
Well, one thing I want to mention before we get into Cameron Wake is I just saw that Bruce Irvin's going to sign with the Raiders.
Yeah. So, well, hooray! Raiders threw money at Bruce Irvin.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see. I know Jacksonville is still out there. They gave Malik Jackson a ton of money. Just an absurd deal, but I mean they're in a position. I think they were sitting on like $80 million in cap space, so I mean they earned the right to throw it around like Scrooge McDuck, and they proceeded to do just that. Cameron Wake, it would be great. I know he's not going to restructure. We've seen that come out there. It would be great to get him at a lower cap hit, but it's a little bit of a risk. He's coming off an Achilles injury, and it's hard to find examples of guys who have bounced back from that quickly. I mean, even Dan Marino, when he came back the year after his Achilles issue, I mean, his leg was completely atrophied on that side. So it's a risk, but if anyone's going to heal from it fast, it would be Cameron Wake. No one in the NFL is more dedicated and takes better care of their body than that guy. So, I mean, a little bit of a risk, but, I mean, I feel like he's earned the benefit of the doubt from the Dolphins at this point. I mean, despite the fact that he's an older guy, I realize he wasn't in the league for a number of years and doesn't have as much wear on him as he could for a guy who's, I think, 34 now. But, I mean, it is what it is, and I think that he can be an integral part of the defense this season.
Yeah, I agree with Keith for the most part. I personally would not rely on him right now, just because of the unknown certainty of what you're going to get. There's a really good chance, his game is predicated on quickness off the ball. Will that Achilles injury slow his, explosion out of his stance? And so would be a little nervous to be going into this season expecting him to be your every down defensive end. I just that'd be a pretty big risk. Even just his age alone, can he hold up all season long? Because the reality is not just this Achilles injury. I think he sprained his knee and was out 3 or 4 games the prior year. And as guys get into their mid 30s, that's what happens. They're more prone to get hurt than guys that are in their early 20s. With that being said,
I think he'll be a rotational guy anyway, though. I think you mentioned that he'd be a rotational guy anyway. So if you have Mario Williams in there, I like the idea of him being able to contribute, as you mentioned, as like a third down pass rusher. I think that would be excellent if he's healthy enough to pull that off.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, and then that's what the way I would approach the season is. I think Miami will probably look to add another defensive end yet, very possibly through the draft, or it wouldn't shock me if they bring Derek Shelby back, and then you have some, functional starting caliber defensive ends they have in there, and you bring Cameron Wake in on the obvious passing downs and let him do what he excels at. And if he's holding up really well, you can start working him in more and more downs. But I can't imagine he would even play hardly at all in the training camps and preseasons and stuff, which then means how ready is he going to be for the start of the season when he hasn't been going through the normal training camp routine. And so I definitely would look at him as the third defensive end that's a pass rushing specialist. And with how well he's taking care of himself, if he does rehab the injury, he could make a good living at that for 3 or 4 more years. I kind of remember years ago they had like Charles Haley and these guys that were not every down defensive end, but what they could do, on a limited basis was really good at rushing the passer. And that may be what Cameron Wake needs to become for the last 2 years of his career is just go back to being the pass rushing specialist, because with that injury and everything and his age, and he never was a dominant run defender anyway, I think that's where to go with him. So I would love to see him cut his cap hit down and maybe go for another year or two, but I don't think Cameron Wake was willing to do that. I think he wants that money, and he probably knows if he became a free agent, when you get into the training camp, somebody's going to blow their knee out or something like a freak injury like Dante Fowler last year. And if Cameron Wake's healthy and he's a free agent, he's going to get paid that money to come in for that year, and he knows that. So that's his market.
And I think that about does it for the Dolphins' current free agents who are going to be leaving or could be leaving. So before we wrap this up, there's some people in the YouTube chat that are asking about cornerback free agency. Somebody's asking about what do you think of Janoris Jenkins and other cornerbacks in this free agent class? First, we'll talk about Jenkins since he was singled out, and then we'll discuss what everybody else thinks of what you guys think about the other guys that are available. So Keith, go ahead. What do you think about Janoris Jenkins?
I'm not a huge fan of Janoris Jenkins. I liked him more when he was coming out of Florida. With the Rams, I think that he's done some good things. He's an undersized guy. If we're looking for a certain breed of corner in Vance Joseph's scheme, I don't think Janoris Jenkins is there. I think Janoris Jenkins is more Brent Grimes type in terms of being able to take on skills, taking on the run, that kind of thing. So not anywhere near my first option. I think that I think Byron Maxwell is really a knockout in terms of what Dan Joseph wants to do. So you're looking for those bigger physical corners, guys who can run and everything. Janoris Jenkins is a good corner, but has never really been a really team-first guy. There's always been character issues there. I think he had something like 4 or 5 kids before he even got to the NFL. I think it was 4. So it's just, I don't know, it's a mess that I really don't want to hitch Miami's wagon to.
And I'm with Keith on that. The thing I don't like about Janoris Jenkins is he's never had a lot of interceptions, and that's what you need from your corners are some game-changing plays. He's got the speed, and he's not a small corner, but he's definitely not a big corner either. So I would be fine if he were realistically eligible. But the reality is with Janoris Jenkins is he's going to get paid a big contract because he's probably one of the highest rated free agents available right now. And I don't think Miami's looking to put a bunch of money into somebody like Janoris Jenkins right now. I think there's other options. And I think the hottest name is Pac-Man, but I think Pac-Man comes a little cheaper because of the issues he's had. Obviously, he had the issues in the playoff game with the Bengals and stuff. And so I think he would be, from a contract standpoint, quite a bit cheaper than Janoris Jenkins. And so that's my biggest issue with him, is just the contract it's going to take to get him.
And I think what needs to be taken into account is that Pac-Man. I think you guys brought it up. I'm sorry, I got distracted. Pac-Man has a good relationship with Vance Joseph. Chad, you brought up the issue after that playoff game. I think, was it the Super Bowl he flipped out, or was it before?
He cost them.
The Bengals. No, he wasn't in the Super Bowl. Oh, it's been a long day.
No, and obviously he's had a complete history of just getting in trouble, and so you're taking that on if you bring Pac-Man Jones in, but it's a little bit different for Miami because of Vance Joseph. So they're going to have a little bit of a relationship. But if you're looking for what Miami needs, in my opinion, is they need to get themselves a talented corner. I'm not completely, I guess. I'm on the fence. I think Tony Lippett still has the actual talent to be a very good corner, but he needs, a lot of experience at the position. But Miami really needs to consider spending a high draft pick in the next year or two, a first round, second round caliber minimum on some cornerbacks, because they need to get that talent into their cornerback position. But I don't think getting, like, Janoris Jenkins is your prototypical guy who's decent, not great, that's going to get paid a ton of money. Where I feel you'd be far better off to draft that guy, and then if you can't draft him, or if you want to wait till next year, you're far better off to get a guy like Pac-Man Jones for a year or two to fill the void until you get that guy that's a rookie.
And one more guy that the Dolphins have been rumored to be interested in. How about Patrick Robinson, formerly of the Chargers?
Go ahead, Keith.
I liked him when he came into the league out of Florida State in 2010. Has never really been able to play up to his potential for the most part. I don't look at him as a number one guy, but I think that could be a quality piece in this defense. But I mean, if you're looking for a guy who, if you've got Byron Maxwell as your number two and you're looking for a number one, I don't know if Patrick Robinson's that guy. I think Jason Verrett is that guy out in San Diego. So another complimentary piece, not a knockout type. If the Dolphins are looking for that guy, it's probably going to be with that 13th pick, with an Eli Apple or a William Jackson. Or I don't see Mackenzie Alexander working in this Vance Joseph scheme, but I mean, who knows? But I wouldn't draft him to play in his own defense.
I just remembered one more thing. How about the Dolphins' current number one cornerback, Brent Grimes? Since I'm not even going to discuss the whole situation. I'm not even going to bother to describe it. Brent Grimes, go, Chad.
God, I personally, well, I mean, I'm not going to go into. Everybody knows the issue, and it's not Brent Grimes. So there's so much more to Brent Grimes right now, because you've got a brand new coach. You're trying to get your philosophy and the team put together, and it's unprecedented. I don't think it's in the history of me watching football. I've never seen anything like it, where it's the spouse of the football player who's making him almost incapable of keeping him on the team, because she causes so much trouble. And I don't care what sport you're in, to have a situation where that person will give information out of the locker room what's going on is just unbelievable. So for that reason, I don't know that he's, for any of, whatever he's being paid, if it's even realistic anymore.
It's about the same as what Maxwell would be making if he came just straight.
Well, I know, but my point being, if you were paying him $1 million a year, the amount of baggage that's coming with him, I just don't know if it's worth it anymore. I think the Dolphins front office is tired of it, dealing with it, and I mean, it's it's nothing but embarrassing. I mean, to have somebody getting arrested at your stadium and all that stuff. So I don't know that they want to deal with that anymore. I think they're just done with it. But with that being said, I think Byron Maxwell and Brent Grimes would give you two very solid veteran corners. Neither of them, like are elite talent shutdown corners, but I would love to pair a young corner, whether that's Tony Lippert or whether you use a number one pick or a second round pick on a young corner and have them work with those two guys is an ideal course for the future. So I absolutely think like I was saying earlier in the show, you need three capable corners in the league right now, and Brett Grimes is a capable corner that you can work with on the field. So, it's hard to see how it's going to play out. I do feel pretty strongly he's not going to get the contract he's getting right now from anybody. A lot of, unfortunately for him, because of his wife, any team is aware of that at this point. They're not going to give him money nobody else wants that headache, and so he's probably learning right now the hard way more than any other that his market has been significantly damaged because of her, and they're trying to figure out what his market is. And if he'll take a pay cut and maybe go down to more to the like $4 million range, I think the Dolphins would strongly consider keeping him. If he won't do that, I think he's probably gone. Or if Miami is, as the rumors are flying on, if they are legitimately able to sign Pac-Man or in that realm, then he'll be gone for sure. If Miami brings in another corner in free agency, they're not keeping Brent Grimes.
Keith, anything to say?
No. I mean, without getting into that one, Chad's right. It's an embarrassment. And in my opinion, it's also a show of support toward Ryan Tannehill that they're just getting rid of her, because that was something the last regime acted like it wasn't even happening. And I took great offense to that. That's pretty much any respect I had for Joe Philbin and company went out the door when it was pretty much just like a out of sight, out of mind thing with what she was saying about the quarterback. You can't have that. Adam Gase knows that if you're going to have a successful football team, it's got to be total respect in-house. You can't have people, players' wives speaking out, causing problems like that. And I mean, Chad's right that it's almost made Brent Grimes unsignable. I'm sure somebody would bring him in, but it's going to be a tough sell. And it's got to be conditional in that we can't have the kind of distractions that your wife caused with your previous employer. It's just not going to work. So my guess is that he's probably going to go. I think they'll bring in another free agent corner. I don't think Brent Grimes fits what Dan Joseph wants to do anyway. So I think it works for everyone. You're able to upgrade what you want to do in terms of scheme fit. And you're getting rid of the biggest distraction this team has had in my opinion, decades.
Yeah. So before we sign off, there was this one other guy. It's another one in the YouTube chat. We says we need a traditional fullback. Did Chicago have a traditional fullback, Keith?
Traditional, not anyone that got like a ton of playing time. I mean, they don't want to use Earl Mitchell. So
I wanted using Ndamukong Suh as a fullback. Like, forget Mitchell. Just put Suh back there and let him bowl everyone over.
No, you don't. Now with his restructure, you absolutely don't. Because if he blows his knee out, we're screwed. So I would not put Ndamukong Suh at fullback.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing a lot of fullback where it's tough to find offenses that really use the fullback now. So typically you're just using a second running back and a guy who might be a little bit bigger. So I don't know if a fullback's in the cards. If it is, it's a late draft thing where you can bring in some of these bigger kids who you can place in your backfield. But another great example of Adam Gase doing good things with an offense that weren't necessarily thought of as ideal at the time is he gets to Chicago and Matt Forte gets hurt, and then he gets Jeremy Langford, who's a talented younger back, a rookie, and that guy was outstanding for Chicago. So, I mean, losing Lamar Miller hurts, but, I mean, the president said that if you can get the right talent in there, I mean, Adam Gase knows how to use those guys. Whereas, I mean, the previous regime, they had zero idea how to use the backfield. So that's something to be excited about, regardless of who's in there.
Yeah, I agree with that point. So, sorry, Tavoris Orr. I don't like. I don't think that fullback is in the cards. What is it? I think only Green Bay uses it, and it's only so they can yell "coon," right?
Well,
I think
some
that's a
teams
bit
still do
good.
it, but it's less common in the NFL. I do think Miami needs a power set for the 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s,
And it's not a Jai.
But no, it's not a Jai. I've been telling people since he came here that people thought he was going to be the comprehensive power back. I'm like, he is not a power running back. You've watched him run. But I wouldn't mind seeing Miami get somebody that can play the fullback position.
Chris Ivory.
Yeah, that's an example. But who's at Carolina at Tolbert? I mean, there's one of those bowling ball type guys that are nearly impossible to stop from getting a yard or two. That Miami definitely could use that. But the reality in the NFL is most teams prefer to bring in extra tight end type sets as opposed to using a fullback set. But and they're a dime. You can't pay a fullback more than the league minimum practically in today's NFL. That's just the reality of it.
It's like when the Bengals bring Tyler Eifert and they just put him in their backfield. Something to consider that if you're looking for a sledgehammer back and the Dolphins don't take him in the first round, you're going to start hearing the Derrick Henry questions going into day 2. So that's something just to take note of if it works out that way. If they don't take Ezekiel Elliott, you'll have people just absolutely going nuts looking for Derrick Henry out of Alabama.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
If you're pairing him with Jay Ajayi, I think that can be a very good thing. I think that Derrick Henry, I wouldn't say that he's an under-the-radar guy. It's hard to be under the radar when you're the Heisman winner. But he's faster than people thought. He's an absolute sledgehammer. I mean, the guy is enormous. That would be a strange thing to see in Miami backfield, to see a back that big. But I think that there's potential there for him to be a very good player at the NFL level. It would help if the Dolphins could get it together on the offensive line too, obviously. But I can already see where this is going, in that if you got a guy back there and they don't bring anyone in through free agency and draft night passes and Ezekiel Elliott is going somewhere else than Miami, then yeah, I can see people starting to get antsy, thinking that the team's gonna possibly take a shot at a guy like Derrick Henry.
Yeah, this just been so long. So I guess you can count Noshawn. You hardly got to play because of injury. But
you're not allowed to say that name. Only I'm allowed to say
no, Noshawn. It'd be nice for Miami to have a running back that can actually break tackles. I mean, Lamar Miller, he was very good at setting up his blocks, patient runner. He had great burst at times, but I just very rarely that Lamar Miller would just truck a linebacker and keep on going. And it'd be nice to have a guy like that. It's one-on-one. He's extremely difficult to bring down. And so I don't know. A lot of the NFL goes away from that concept in general. But why not have some guy like that be your 3rd running back or something like that can be active? And when you get into those games and you need a physical running back that can just pound it in there, that's something Miami just has not had.
Chris Ivory. That's all I'm going to say about that. We're going to wrap this show up. What time is it? 9:42. It's almost 10 o'clock. So I want to thank you all for joining us. For those in the YouTube chat, we actually used the YouTube chat this week. That's actually very nice. And we had a caller. Thank you, Tony, for calling us. We appreciate you coming on and chatting with us a little bit. So this show is going to be available on iTunes, on Stitcher, and of course on our SoundClouds directly. So we finally got back to iTunes, ladies and gentlemen. So if you can subscribe, you can download, you can do whatever you want with that. So that's going to be it. We're probably going to have a lot more to talk about next week. Free agency officially starts tomorrow. It's been going unofficially for the past 3 days now. So for myself, Chad Ronnebaum, and Keith Beebe, who of the Phinsider with the PH, I want to thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you all next time for another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast.